Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wedding Ceremony Podcast. We talk about anything and everything that has to do with wedding ceremonies. My name is Clint Hufton. With me is a gentleman that has a lot to say about wedding ceremonies, JP Reynolds.
Clint, as always, good to be with you. Good to be with our people.
I just want to tease before we get into our credentials and all that stuff. I just want to tease the audience. You have a lot to look forward to in upcoming episodes because JP and I pretty much did a whole episode before I hit the record button. The timing of it, we have to be sensitive. Anybody that's in the wedding industry knows if the wedding hasn't happened yet, then you got to be really careful what you say publicly. And so that's all I'm going to say about that. JP is an accomplished author. His books are in the Amazon store and in the Kindle store in Amazon. He is a communications expert. Thebusinessofconfidence.com is that website. His wedding website is jprweddings.com. Mine is just my name, Clint Huft, CLINTHUFFT.com for all of the things that I do. And as you may have surmised, we are both wedding officiants following the full spectrum of wedding ceremonies for a long time.
We add, Clint, that I used to think that I was a communications expert. After meeting with a particular couple recently, I now think I am not an expert on communication. That's just a sneak peek preview of a couple of weeks down the road. Let me step back. Please continue with what you were going to say.
I did a wedding a couple of weeks ago. Parents on both sides were divorced. Now, I don't really get into the nitty gritty of it unless it's going to be an issue. But what was fascinating is I get there early and I'm checking everything. And somebody says, "Where is the bride's mom?" And the bride's brother has gone to pick her up. And I'm thinking, we're about a half hour away. This is odd. And why wasn't she part of the pre-ceremony festivities and photos and all that kind of stuff? I'm thinking, this is for real. There's something intense is happening right now.
This is like you just sitting down and saying, "Hey, JP, would you like some candy? Hey, little diabetic, can I offer you some sweets?" But please continue.
Here's the thing. The mom shows up and she's got that interesting look on her face. I know you've seen it. It's the look of, I don't know if I'm happy. And okay, fine. The brother is definitely taking care of the mom. I'm not caught up in all of that other than, oh, you're the mom. Well, and then I always say, your dress is lovely. It's very nice to meet you. And no, I always say your
You
dress is lovely.
compliment the dress.
Absolutely. Every single time they're dressed up and, the weddings that we do, it's a kind of a thing. And that they've put a lot of thought into what they're wearing. And I just figure the best thing I can do for them and for everybody else, quite honestly, is just to say your dress is lovely.
You're lovely. You're lovely. Because I
Yeah.
have a problem saying, "Who told you you looked good in that? That's what you had in the closet?"
Oh, that's just it. I don't think these dresses were in the closet. Okay, so here's the thing. Obviously, I'm picking up on this dynamic, but I'm also focused on everything else that I'm supposed to do as the officiant. It turns out she was going to get escorted up the aisle as part of the processional. Okay, great. She's not sitting in the front row. She's sitting in the second row next to the aisle. The aisle is decorated so that you can't get to your seat directly from the aisle. You got to go around the outside to get to your seat. Everybody is already seated. So the question is, how is she going to get to her chair next to the aisle, crossing over 7 people?
There's big floral arrangements.
Yeah, you have to step over at least 2 feet high to get into the rows of chairs from the aisle. You got to go around the outside. So they said that, and I said, that's okay. I'll take care of you. I'll be right there and I'll ask everybody to stand up so you have plenty of room till you go to your chair. And that's exactly what we did. She walks up the aisle. She gets to the outside. I said, second row, if you would please rise so the mother and the bride can get to her chair. It worked fine. Everything was fine. Then here's the key moment. Before everybody walks up the aisle, I'm in the lineup with the event planner. The first people down the aisle are going to be the mom and her son, the brother of the bride. Right before we start, the event planner comes up to me with that look in her eyes of, this is really serious. And she said, don't have the groom say anything to the mom, because she knows that I always advise the groom when he goes to get the bride. I always say to him, honor her mother. And we talk about this beforehand, like, when I'm talking to him separately about all the other stuff, I always say, honor her mother. I'll say, all you have to do is walk up to her, look her in the eyes and say, thank you. And whatever's your relationship with her, if you hug her, you hug her. If you don't, you don't, whatever that is. But that eye contact and saying thank you in this public forum at this particular moment will pay dividends for years. So I always say that.
Can I just say that's very lovely. So you're saying that if it's the father or some male relative who escorts the bride down the aisle, that the groom first goes over to the mother,
Yes.
says what you just said, and then goes over and gets his bride.
Yeah. And then what I say is all you have to do is look at her and say thank you. And then I'd say don't even look at the dad. Just go right to the mom, say thank you, and then go and then do everything you've rehearsed.
Do you then give instructions to the event planner to rehearse that?
No, that's the thing. It's a very personal surprise that I give to the groom.
Uh-huh.
And there's only in all the years that I've been doing this, the groom understands. They understand the significance of the moment.
Right.
And I say, you haven't rehearsed this. And I always pull them aside. So it's just the two of us talking. And I say, here's what I'm going to do. When it's time for you to go forward, I'm going to say, honor her mother. And you just do a beeline to the mom, say thank you, then go to the dad and do everything you rehearsed. Don't worry, I'll take care of you from that point forward. And it always works really well. And I can always tell that it hits the mom like a ton of bricks, like it's the coolest thing ever.
For me, that is something new.
Okay.
I've not heard of that. You have never told me that. I don't know why it's taken this long for you to tell me this. That is very lovely.
I think it's just like everything else that we do. We do it so often that it's like second nature, and I don't even think about it. I don't think that this is that unique. But here's the reason I'm bringing it up. You understand that the mom is in the second row, and right before we walk out the processional, very quietly, the event planner says, you know that thing where you have the groom thank the mom? Yeah, don't do that because dynamics, don't do that. And she had that look in her eyes like she just received that instruction from somebody. I said, okay. But in my head, I'm thinking, all he has to do is look at her. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. So obviously the dynamics are pretty intense in regard to the estrangement or whatever the behavior of somebody, whatever. It's time. We figured out how to get the mom to her chair. Everybody stands. The bride walks up with her dad. They stop and they want me to ask who presents this woman. So I do. I always give the dad an opportunity to whisper in the bride's ear if he wants to, whatever. You know, I'm a dad and that's a really special moment. So then I look at the groom and I say, honor her mother. And he already is looking right at her. And I'm thinking, whatever this is going to be is whatever it's going to be. Because she's in the second row, he has to kind of walk past the bride in order to get to the mom. And I'm thinking all he has to do is stop and say thank you. That's what I think is going to happen. But here's what happened. He walks past the bride. He walks right up to the mom. He says, thank you. And he hugs her over the flowers that are in the aisle. He hugs her. Big smile on both sides. And then he comes back and he does everything else. And I'm thinking, I have no idea. I'm not going to have any connection or communication with the family after that day. But I'm thinking it's possible something was healed in that moment where she felt special. Because if they've been through a divorce, she feels like she's been diminished or whatever the case may be. But the groom to go up and actually hug that mom and have them both be so happy at that moment, it wasn't spoken of again. We went right into the ceremony. Everybody's focus was on that. But I think there's possible that something was healed in that moment.
Fascinating. No, and it really, I mean, this speaks to the power and the mystery of ceremony and ritual.
Yeah.
And it is about an officiant having to trust their own instinct. Now, I have to say, you know, again, not having had any relationship with the couple, not being you, my instinct in hearing the story would be, oh my God, Clint, what are you doing? No, stop. No, don't. No, Clint, no. The event planner, the captain of the ship said, don't. My instinct would have been to say, all right, I'm gonna obey the captain of the ship. But that doesn't mean anything because I'm just watching the movie. I'm just an observer here. It really speaks to when people talk about what it is to be an officiant. Oftentimes, I think they mistakenly think it's, oh, I'm going to be a Toastmaster, conference room, boardroom talk. It's a public speaking, but it's so deeply nuanced. And you can only successfully navigate a ceremony if you've honed your relationship instincts. And I think that the story beautifully illustrates what every officiant has to make these in the moment decisions. And these decisions can have small effects with a huge impact. I think it's fascinating and props to you, bro.
Well, I hope. I mean, you make a good point. It's one of my favorite event planners, and we have a great relationship, and it was never brought up again. Nobody said anything about it.
Well,
It
no, here,
happened and then was forgotten.
all that matters is, was there a smile in the moment?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
all, that's all that mattered. She could have kicked him in the butt on the dance floor at the reception. Okay. That's a whole other segment. And that has nothing to do with you. I don't hear music playing in the background. Okay. This is not the end of the movie. Okay. People are consistent. So let's see what's happening in that Thanksgiving this year. However, none of that really matters. What matters is the moment.
You
It's
know,
about,
and what feeds into this, now that I'm thinking about it, this bride was very, very particular about every little tiny little thing, including what I wore. The week of the wedding, she said, "I never asked you this, but what do you wear?" Well, I tell everybody in the very first meeting, I tell them what I normally wear, a black suit. But I always say, I have a black robe if you want that look. And so I said that to her, and she said, "Oh, the robe, please." And then every step of the way, as I was thinking about the planning process and everything, she's very, very, very concerned and very particular. And we've all had couples that are like that. In this particular instance, when she got in front of me, all of that was already forgotten as far as I'm concerned, because they had to focus on the ceremony. And you know how couples are when all of a sudden they're in front of everybody and they got to do something. Your point about the officiant and the nuance of the job is really on spot, because you and I both know how the littlest thing can get in the way of the overall happiness of the moment. And so a lot of the logistical, practical things that we pay attention to are just so that nothing breaks the concentration and the joy between the couple. That's my opinion. We've seen people that take it as a public speaking forum. I even saw a minister from a church decide that he was going to give a fire and brimstone sermon for 10 minutes at the very beginning of the ceremony while the couple was standing frozen in front of him.
you don't do that?
At the rehearsal, I do that.
I don't go to the rehearsal, but okay.
Yeah, we've seen all of that kind of stuff. Even what the officiant holds on to that they think makes them unique and great. There was one where the officiant said something about the bride's heart, took the groom's hand and put it on the bride's chest, but he made a joke out of it and said, "No, no, no, not there, up here," while he's holding the groom's hand. And he thought that was the funniest thing that could ever happen. And he said, "I always get a big laugh with that." This is a long, long time ago. And I talked to some other people, including professionals, and they said that was so inappropriate at that moment. But you couldn't tell the officiant that, because they thought that was their signature move and that it was a great thing. Sometimes we're walking on ice. Is that the break? We're walking on eggshells. We're anyway. We're taking an interesting walk.
Walking on eggshells that are scattered across the ice. It's interesting. It speaks to the fact that each officiant has his or her own particular style, and we have our own preference in terms of where we're comfortable, where we're uncomfortable, our own understanding of what are we doing here, what to emphasize, what to not emphasize. This rise in popularity of inviting the favorite uncle or the favorite drinking buddy from college to officiate, there's a belief that, well, it's just a ceremony and it's like a toast. And people really don't appreciate the nuance of it all, because it is a nuance. And you know, this is a wonderful, again, surprise, surprise, a little story leads to a long conversation. Given my own family's dynamics, and I've given some insight over the years into my family's wackadoodness. If you've challenged me, I'm going to think about this, because I'm not sure that I would be anywhere near as comfortable as you are in saying to a groom, now you're going to go to the mother and say thank you. I don't know that I can do that. I don't know if I'm comfortable doing that. And I'm not beating myself up, because the show goes on quite lovely without a thank you to the mother. However, if you're presenting a signature moment that is part of your brand, and it's fascinating.
That's interesting, your take on this. And now it makes me think of all the people that are listening to this or watching this and what their reaction is going to be. I never even thought in terms of how deep the ramifications would be with that moment, other than I know what it's like to be a son-in-law. I don't know. It'll be interesting to hear feedback, if any, on that thing. Cause I don't know. It just felt good to me the first time that I did it a long time ago. And I always give them the option.
Right.
I mean, on very rare occasions, the groom will say, "I'm not going to do that." Okay, great. Okay. No
Right.
worries. It's not obligatory, but it is something that they all seem to lock in on.
See, that's what we forget, and that's a strong statement, but it's easy to forget. every officiant brings to the moment their own life experience.
Right.
The ceremony script, the ceremony act is fairly cut and dry. You do, great, go party, get drunk. I mean, it's like it's just an I do. But it's what we bring to it, the energy, the life experience, the point of view, what we highlight, what we don't highlight, what we nuance, all of that is what it means to be an officiant.
And I'd like to add what we ignore, the things that we don't give any energy to,
Yeah.
whether it be an outside noise or something that happens, even having that awareness of what to ignore, to not give any energy that would distract even more, I think is also one of the subtle, really important parts of being a good officiant, I think.
And I take it just a pinch further is what potentially could interrupt varies from officiant to officiant. For some officiants, they don't even hear the plane.
Oh, right.
For you and I, I mean, just a month or so ago, a plane was flying overhead. I just paused and I said, paparazzi. Everybody laughed. And we could go, then, it's like we could move on. Because the plane kept circling and I don't know what was going on. And it was like, but we
Oh, see, that's different. That's different where it lingers as opposed to just something that's a
yeah,
drive-by. Yeah.
yeah. You have to figure out in the moment, what are you going to acknowledge? What are you going to recognize? What are you going to do with a distraction? And all of that, you see, that is, if there is a case to be made for working with a professional officiant, the friend, the family member, unless they have experience in public speaking, they are not going to know how to handle that moment.
Well, even on a different kind of a different genre, but still relevant to what we're talking about, I've been a master of ceremonies since I was 11. So I've done all kinds of things. Oh, you actually did this with me. There was an event planner that had an event in Las Vegas. It was about 50 couples from the Seattle area, and they
Mhm.
came down to do a big vow renewal.
Mhm.
And the event planner wanted a diversity of officiants. And so we had a friend of ours who's a rabbi who spoke, and you spoke, and then I spoke as like a civil servant, kind of a non-denominational type of a thing. And then the couples all said their private vows to each other, which was a cacophony. I thought that was pretty funny. The event planner said that as a master of ceremonies, they hired a comedian. And just like what we're talking about, there are nuances to officiating, there are nuances to be a master of ceremonies.
Mhm.
And I understand that if you've got a joke or two in your bag of tricks, but actually guiding people through an event is a unique set of skills that a master of ceremonies has. The
Mhm.
same way that guiding people through a wedding ceremony is a unique set of skills that a good officiant has. I think that's 100% because this poor guy was kind of a fish out of water, and there were things that I was watching and I thought, oh, you could have done this or you should have said that or whatever. It's a different genre, but it is basically the same concept of there's so many little things that go into what we do if we do it well. And a lot of it has to do with human beings and emotions and all the subtleties that come along with that a lot of people don't realize. No, you're not. I did have another officiant who said that he tells the couples, we're going to put on a show. You guys are the stars. They're the audience. And he approaches it that way as an entertainer. But there are subtleties to the romance side of it and the interpersonal dynamics that can be missed. It can become a glaring omission if you're not sensitive to it.
Right. No, I think that's the truth of it. In its essence, a wedding ceremony is very cut and dry. It's very simple and it can be accomplished in 3, 4 minutes. And it's done every day at the county clerk's office
Yep.
for a whole bunch of people. But how you craft the ceremony and what it means, the officiant is going to bring their own beliefs and biases to that ritual.
Which is why in the initial conversation, and then as you go through the process of working with the couple for the ceremony, really being open to what's happening right now, reading the room constantly in order to give that unique experience on the day of the wedding to that unique group of people. Only experience, you got to get your reps in to understand how nuanced and how important all those little things are.
Well, it is because every couple brings their own biases
Yeah.
to the process. If somebody grew up in a defined church environment. Their understanding of what a ritual is different from somebody who grew up in a non-churched family that had no conscious experience of ritual and ceremony. The difference between a couple, as you know, who their hobby is to go to weddings, and so they have a whole roster to choose from, as opposed to those who I've had couples say, yeah, we've never been to a wedding. And my thought is, but you're 25 years old. How could you never have been to a wedding? I mean, you loser. Oh my God. It's like those two different couples, those were two very different conversations.
Right. I remember I went to a gathering of your wedding professionals and there was a guy that was going to speak. He says, I really honestly don't know why I'm here. The only wedding I've ever been to is my own. But he was going to speak to business professionals, you know what I mean? And that was his forte. Well, JP, we have run out of time. Tell everybody how they can get in touch with you.
You can shoot me an email at jp@jprweddings.com. Social media, JPR Weddings.
And you can get in touch with me through my website, Clint Huft, ClintHuft.com, for all the things that I do. That's it for this episode of the Wedding Ceremony Podcast. This is Clint, and on behalf of JP, we will see you next time.